you boring ladder pulling moron.
We're moving on. You guys are unbelievable.
How dare you? How dare you deny people of today the timeless trope?
But
I mean, you have to start with it now. You're the odd one out.
You
I
two
mean,
are
how many
killing me.
children? Yes, let me. No. Give me all of that.
Welcome to the Indie Fantasy Club. Today I am joined by Austin and Richard from To Ramble. I'm sure you guys are all fans of their channel. They talk about all things books, all things fantasy. Very entertaining to listen to. So if you haven't already, be sure to go and subscribe to their channel. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about tropes and what we think should be left behind into the past and what we should take with us into the big 26. Okay, so Austin, Richard, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks a bunch for having us. I always love a good trope talk, and we can get a little spicy. Like maybe, Rich, we'll get like really hard agrees or disagrees. The hope is that we have some disagreement here. It could be more fun.
I already know the debate on the Farmboy is gonna be heated.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's what we like to hear. As long as you feel passionately opinionated about these tropes, that's all that really matters. There's no lukewarm takes in this discussion.
Okay. I can always make myself passionate about something. That is what I strive to be overly passionate about very mundane things. If you sense me giving too much of a lukewarm, it depends answer, just let me know. I'll double down one way or the other.
Okay.
I'm flexible.
Good. That's what we like to hear. We're going to really turn the heat up, make sure we feel some pressure, and hopefully we don't all agree with each other on each trope. Hopefully we have a little bit of disagreement between the three of us, but we'll see.
Hopefully we can bully you one of these times. I'm so used to arguing with Rich. Maybe it's just, I think this is what your viewers need to see.
I am looking forward to somebody else.
Yeah, bring it on. I'm looking forward to some heated debate. I've been practicing talking to myself for a year, so we'll see how it goes. So I wanted to we have a whole list of these tropes, okay? These are like the most common tropes, or maybe the most controversial tropes, kind of that I noticed or that we kind of had talked about. And I just wanted to put them all on the list so that we can just get them all out there and talk about how we feel about the fantasy genre and what we think needs to move forward. So the first one on our list today is hard magic systems. Now, hard magic systems kind of came about and became popular with the rise of Brandon Sanderson, right? With Mistborn, with the Stormlight Archive, where he just really nails down exactly how the magic works to the point where it's almost science. And because of that, I feel like I saw a lot more of that with other authors. So I just want to get our feel of if we think we should continue this trope of hard magic systems, or if this is something that we should leave behind. So is this a smash or a pass for hard magic systems? I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. And 3, 2, 1. Okay. So we've got 2 passes, but Austin thinks that we should keep hard magic systems. So I'm going to turn it over to Austin to defend hard magic.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Now I do get the sentiment first of, your Tolkien, your Rockio types, or the George R.R. Martins, who it's the soft magic kind of helps with some of the world building and keeps it more ethereal and grounds you in more fantasy and mythos than it does become a science. Because, hey, keep your science fiction in science fiction. Like, why does my fantasy need to be all dialed up and scientific? The reason I say yes, I'd like more of it is, well, Sanderson is a great example of it's a very fun type of read to when you deeply understand a magic system, especially I'll go through Sanderson's laws of magic. And this is what I like about how he phrases it is one of his laws is, your satisfaction with a magic system and the payoff in a book is directly correlated to how well you understand the magic system. So those big moments where it's almost like a fun mystery or a fun way to solve a plot beat, if it's built up and Chekhov's gunned enough to, okay, I understand how this works. Now, there could be a fun puzzle way of how this magic system solves a problem the character runs into, if it's well written. And so that's one of his laws. His other laws he does in I guess world building in general is go deeper, not wider. So he has the tendency to, when a magic system's introduced, he will focus so hard on it so that anytime you think of Mistborn, we all know the Mistborn magic system. We all know how Stormlight functions. So I think for what it does, it's a really great strength when done well and creates fun payoffs in those kind of books. At the same time, I don't want all my books having hard magic systems. I'm
Of
totally with
course.
you, but I would like to see some more fun. I think we haven't stretched it completely yet because I think I'm going off. I'm the one that said yes for this. So I'll go
Yes.
one more sentence with this, or paragraph, I guess. Like the lit RPG and progression fantasy route that's been developing more is based in that hard magic a bit, where it's, hey, understanding exactly how the functions of the world works. And I think we're just starting to dabble in that stuff, and there's some more innovation that can happen before it gets too tired. And so that is why I will defend hard magic systems, despite me loving when there's not one too. There you go.
Austin, I'll say that you're very fortunate that you brought up progression fantasy and lit RPG there at the end, because you would have
Yes.
lost me until that point. And now I'm like, ooh, I forgot to consider those. But before I get into my Richard, let's hear your perspective on why we should leave this trope behind.
Well, okay. I was in the middle. This is one of those things of, okay, I'm going to take a side. I'm going to
Yeah.
go through it. I like hard magic systems. However, I specifically on the question of like, should we leave it behind a little bit in the big 2-6? I don't want it to get beaten to death. It already seems like the dominant form of magic system, that every new magic system has to be Sanderson-esque and hard magic. At least at my point now, it seems more repetitive,
Yes.
and a lot of focus is put onto the magic system, and not enough time and attention is paid to the rest of the story.
Hmm.
Um, so I would like to see, hey, deviant away. If like, hey, let's start going towards softer magic systems. Let's lean that direction. Um, yeah, that's why I was like, you know what? Let's leave it behind.
Yeah,
Let's let
and
it
again,
cool.
I'm a big fan of hard magic systems too. Like I love Brandon Sanderson, I love his magic, and you're right, Austin. When it's done well, the payoffs are great. My issue is that sometimes, like Rich just said, it becomes so much a part of the story where I'm like, when can we move on from this 4-page explanation on how this magic system works, and then repeated in every chapter? You push down and then you go up. By the way, you push down. Like, I don't care. I just want to see us moving forward. Like, at a certain point, it just becomes burdensome to me as a reader. And the other thing, too, is I would rather the author know how the magic system works. I want it to be a hard magic system for the author and be a soft magic system for the reader. So there's clearly rules, there's clearly a structure and a system, consequences, costs, but they're not necessarily like beaten over the head to us as readers, so that we can just know that whatever the rule system is, the author knows and we can trust the author. And so we still get those payoffs, we still get those things, but it feels softer because it's not like so heavily explained.
Yeah, that's a good point
Yeah.
too. I think with your what's the story archetype where you just have your character who's in a new world, or whether it's your Harry Potter going to Hogwarts and now all the world building stuff is being introduced to the character. The same way with Vin and in Mistborn, she is becoming a Mistborn, or she is now she is a Mistborn, and she needs to learn how to use that to their advantage. So it's
Mm-hmm.
this character introduced to everything. So it's kind of a good way for an author to be able to quote unquote info dump a little bit, because
Yeah.
hey, look at this person who doesn't know anything about the big wider world, and boom. Which I think that has a tendency to feel more YA in general.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In general, not that an adult fantasy cannot have that. Because hey, would we consider Stormlight more adult? I think so, but even with that, I guess when I'm thinking of hard magic systems, I think it in general works better in some YA as
Mm-hmm.
well,
Yeah.
as more of those fun reads. I don't think
Yeah.
I've read a hard magic book. I'm trying to think top of my head, but a hard magic book where it's focus audience is like, let's get the adults, like the more this is the literature adults, the ones who are reading to like develop and think. I don't get that as much. It leans toward the more fun and
Mhm.
it reads more to me like the genre of like a mystery thriller or a heist or something like that than that. And that's where it gets into the question of, does it the hard what do you guys think about, is hard magic more sci fantasy? Would you say
Mhm.
it should, like, generally, would you call Mistborn a sci fantasy, or Stormlight certainly, more sci fantasy? What would you guys say?
I would, just
Yeah.
because like I feel like science has those hard structured rules.
Yeah.
That's what makes it a science. Is like gravity is this, theory where the Earth is pulling us down or whatever, and that's essentially how they are building the magic systems. Is they're building them as these like theoretical like elements or rules to the world.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Mhm.
that's how I feel about it anyway. But it sounds
Yeah.
like we're pretty. It sounds like me and Austin are pretty much on either side, and Rich is kind of the one that's on the middle, leaning.
Well, that's the thing, is when it's done well, I love it. It's one of my
Mhm.
favorite things of
Yes.
when it's
Yeah.
executed well. Oh yeah. I keep bringing it up every time. Like Lycanis strikes the
Hmm.
perfect balance of, it does have like two magic systems, one soft, one hard. And the hard magic system manipulates the soft magic system.
Hmm.
My
Yep.
brain was just like, oh yes, let me nom, 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 give me
Mhm.
all of that. Like the training arcs, like one, it's structured in a way of, it's not just, oh, we're in the beginning of the story, we're going to learn all about the magic system. No,
Yep.
we get like a chunk of, hey, we're going to learn this aspect that's relevant to the story. Cool. Move on. And then
Hmm.
later on, hey, here's a completely different chunk you didn't think about, relevant to the story. And we learn
Yes.
about that. It was learning about the magic when it's so well integrated. 100%. The
Well,
thing that
you know
gets,
what does that perfectly, Rich, is Avatar: The Last Airbender or Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Right?
Hmm.
Those are two of my favorite shows, like, even
Hmm.
animations.
Mhm.
And FMA Brotherhood and Avatar, it's not just, hey, let's introduce everything to you and then develop the story. It's, we get episodes in season 2 where we're learning about earthbending, and then we're
Yep.
we're going back. I mean, then firebending in the third. It's literally set up to progress how Avatar is learning the magic. Or in FMA Brotherhood, you find out these deep world building revelations that happen because of it. So it's like, these are like fantastic hard magic worlds that are
Hmm.
deep and explored. And like, the world for Avatar for me is honestly one of my favorite fantasy worlds I could think of. To be honest, it stands up to all those books. But that's a good point. I didn't think of that, where there's plenty of those types where maybe a hard magic, if they lean more into, let it feel soft a bit, and then if it is a hard magic system, part of what you're saying, Vez, is maybe start to reveal more just later. Because
Yep.
hey, we with the creators of Avatar, I'm sure they know how it all works, but then they're withholding some of that fun. They're making you ask some questions of like, "Ooh, what's that?" And then ideally questions that you weren't even asking, of going, "Oh my goodness, this is so much cooler than I thought," and all that stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
And this is going to be this is another trope on the list, which we might get to, which is the schools kind of in
Yeah.
competitions type of trope, because I do feel
me
like you said, that's a
maybe
good.
that's the pushback. It's not a
Yeah.
hard magic system. It's the, like, right at the beginning, you're told the magic system, it is that, and then you learn all
Mm,
about it, and it's just like,
that's it.
and we're done. Maybe
Yeah.
there's a tweak at the, like, maybe you find a nugget at the end of like, ooh, subvert your expectations, but not, that's a nugget or a
Yeah.
twist, rather than like, hey, there is a hard magic system right now. This chunk is relevant, and we're
Yeah.
gonna
Okay,
learn
yep.
it.
Yep.
But we're not going to learn the whole thing. There's still mystery, and like, ooh, that person's doing something over there. I don't
Mhm.
understand it. It's fine to let me be ignorant. How do earthbenders do things? Like, you just like, they do earthbending. Okay, sure. They
Yeah.
just are. But yeah,
And then you meet
that's
Toph.
my. Then you
Yep.
meet Toph, and it's wonderful. Yeah, no, I think that's, maybe I'm more against just the school hard magic system of like, okay,
Yeah.
we learned basically everything at the beginning, and that was the story, not
Yeah. And
not
maybe
an
that's why
element.
progression fantasies and lit RPGs work, is because you do get like those tidbits as you go along, and it's less of like a dump about a school or a situation in the beginning. So maybe that's why I hadn't considered them as part of this discussion, but yeah, I think that there's maybe some. We're gonna have to put this trope into a wiggle room category of some sort because I don't think
Oh
there's a
yeah.
hard smash or pass on this one. I think I'll put it in. I think we'll put it in. We'll put it in the middle and we'll say it just has to be done right and in certain
Welcome.
circumstances.
Ultimately, pass on the standard. I want to see
Mm.
it is a saturated trope. I want to
Yes.
see it done with a little bit more creativity, grace mixed in well. Rather
Agreed.
than
So,
leaning on the hard magic trope, I think is like that's the pass of like
yep,
if your selling point is
yep.
look at this hard magic system, nah.
I agree. Let's pass on it for now. And I
Ha
like the
plus.
idea of changing that trope enough that it doesn't
Hey,
fit into
I'll be right next time the law of equivalent exchange. I'm gonna hard magic this next one. You guys watch. It's gonna
that.
happen.
All right. So the next trope that we have that we're going to be talking about
Yeah.
is the coming of age trope. So this is the young hero who is, just innocent to the world and they're called onto an adventure because it's that time of their life. They're learning new things, they're going out on their own, whatever it may be. So it's that coming of age type of a story or trope. Do we feel like we want to see more of that, or are we ready to leave that behind? I'll give you a minute to think about it,
Oh, we're there.
and we'll go ahead and say in 3, 2, 1. Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I didn't think I'd be on the burner this early into the discussion, but
I mean, you
Good.
have to start with it now. You're the odd one out. You need to.
This
Why
is the
should we pass
I
on
I
this
am so
timeless trope?
passionately. This is the
Oh.
trope that never dies.
Ah.
How dare you? How dare you deny people of today the timeless trope? It is for
Listen.
everyone of every generation must have it.
Listen, every generation already has it. We have a zillion coming of
More.
age books. We don't
Never
need
enough.
more of them. We have
Yes.
enough. And
No, never.
here's the thing. We as readers especially, we are growing and evolving with the stories that we read. And I don't know about you, but I have long ago, I feel like I am an old person now, at least physically. So I have moved past the coming of age and I'm now in the sedentary, boring area of life. So I think that we have so many coming of age trope stories that it would be so much cooler to see different stages of life as the main focus or kickstart or things that catalyzes the story. Like a midlife crisis would be way more fun to read about at this point than reading about a coming of age. Like, what if someone has a midlife crisis that spirals them into having to be a hero? Like, I just think there is more that we could explore from this age type of a trope, as opposed to just always making it okay, this young person discovers a sword and now he's the chosen one, which is a different trope, I understand, but essentially that's what ends up happening. So that's my beef with coming of age. I think that it's done to death, and I think it just lacks the creativity. Even though it is a classic, I agree, it's a classic, and I love the trope, but I just think there are enough of them that already exist.
How dare you pull the ladder up behind you, built as a young boy on these young coming of age stories, and as soon as you climb the ladder of fantasy, you decide to pull it up with you.
Well,
How dare
come
you?
on.
It is
They're going to have to learn to fly.
just because we grew up with our Percy Jackson doesn't mean a boy today is going to be like, oh, I want to go pick up, my older brother or my father's coming of age story. They want their coming of age story of their own for their generation, for their time, with references to their problems. This is a trope that will never die. It will be for every generation of all time.
Okay. Like that's Rich. I could not disagree with you more, but I'm gonna let Austin give his 2 cents as well, so that if I need to keep jabbing, I can. But
Oh
Austin,
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
mean, coming of age, it transcends fantasy, not in our whole speculative fiction genre. We're talking the Ferris Bueller Days Off. We're talking any kind of comedy, rom-com, romance. The great thing about coming of age is it's such an actual broad thing that the coming of age can be in a developing romantic feelings, or coming of age could be, having to become your own person or individual, dealing with loss of your parents. It could be coming of age could be a theme about how friends, or losing friends, or gaining friends, or something like that, where the coming of age covers so much that's just integral to who we are as people, right? When we read, one of my biggest things that I read for, like, I love plot, but also themes, and like how thought provoking is a book, and something that has a lasting impact, not even just fun, right? There's fun coming of age, like, the self insert go, and then you beat the bad guy, all of that. But there's so many coming of age stories where it's what here I'll appeal to Rich at least with this one. With, oh my god, not baby, Drive It Like You Stole It. What the hell? Sing Street. Like the movie Sing Street. It's a movie about making a band, right? But what's deeper behind that, it's the relationship between an older brother and younger brother, and the older brother letting his younger brother go off and live a life of his own in the shadow of their parents' divorce, right? And it's like there's more, and there's just a soul to these stories and coming of age that other stories fail to get, because I think the thing that we all think about as adults as well is, you ever hear the saying, like, people are just still a kid inside, or you still have that spirit in you. They're talking about this portion of your life where it may feel the same, but we all have these fond, whether it's nostalgia or memories of that period of life where we changed the most. And then sometimes we also, as adults, need to be reminded about that too, of it. Your childhood just doesn't go away. Now you're the person you are. How often do you have to, like, in the middle of your life, by the way, maybe it's a midlife crisis, where are you losing feelings for your wife or your husband, and like you need to find that spark again, and you're just doing a normal 9 to 5. We need to remember that stuff that made life exciting. And what's more exciting than coming of age and realizing all these lessons learned and this fun? You boring ladder pulling moron.
Listen, it's I it's just so I see what you're saying. Okay, I'll concede with, yes, it is a very memorable time in life. It is very nostalgic looking back at things, but I would rather look forward at things, or read things that we can relate to a little more. I think there's so much that so many other audience can no longer. I mean, obviously we can still relate to coming of age because we went through that, but I think there's so much opportunity in the market, especially to explore different stages of life with just as much thematic messaging, with just as much passion, with just as much connection to relationships. Like, you could explore everything that you just said, with brothers, with parents passing away, with the disillusionment of love, falling in love again. You can explore all of those things at different stages of life. You could explore those things at the end of life for an old mentor or something. So that's what I'm saying, is I think that the coming of age trope is so saturated that it's pointless to do it because there's too much of it. And I think we should leave it behind for a brief period of time, maybe a couple years, so that it can refresh, get some new legs under it.
I
And in the
understand. So until,
meantime,
like, if you have children, like when they're the right age, you want it to be introduced for your
Well, no,
children.
I
And that's it.
understand. There are plenty of children's books out there. They've all been written, and you're old enough. You don't need to read children's books anymore, so they should stop making them until you needed them again. I understand. It's not. I mean, how many children's books do you actually need?
You're killing me here.
For the next 5 years.
We need to evolve and get better with the genre. That's what we need to do. We're stuck in the past. We're stuck with this trope, and we need to get past it. But
look to the wisdom of our elders rather than the folly of the future. Look, there's wisdom in these tropes. They're everlasting. Like, why do you think it's there for so long? Because it spoke to human beings for thousands of years. This has been around. Why do you think it works?
I was hoping I could convince you guys and change your mind, but it's clear that we're going to have to keep it moving into the big 2026. Even though I would rather leave it behind, we'll keep it, okay? We're moving on because we can't talk about this anymore. We're not going to come to a consensus on this one.
No, we won't. We won't.
Like saying we've had enough fantasy. Like
No, I want more different fantasy. Come on, I want more.
Well, I've read billions of fantasy. The fantasy's been a genre for 100 years. There's so much of it.
We're moving on. We're moving on. You guys are unbelievable. Unbelievable. We're moving past this one because you guys can't be reasoned with. So, moving on to the third trope on the list, we're going to talk about maybe another one that might get me in some hot water based off of this discussion. But it is common or traditional races or species. So this will be things like elves, dwarves, vampires, werewolves, just like the more common established fantasy creatures or races that we see a lot of in fantasy. So do we want to continue seeing these types of species or races, or do we want to see kind of different races, kind of like how Brandon Sanderson has done with the Parshendi and those types of things? So that's the question: is do we want to keep these traditional common races, or do we want to move on to something a little bit different? So common races is the trope. Do we smash or pass on the common races? 3, 2, 1. Oh, what the? Listen, this one I'm less passionate about. So even though I'm in the hot seat again, it's good that there's at least some debate here. I was leaning on this one. The reason why I'm kind of unsure on this is because when Tolkien essentially paved the way for elves and dwarves, more or less, he basically created them. Like, they came from old folklore that elves were not considered this majestic, noble race. They were like, in the myths that he pulled from, there are these like little sprites and stuff. So I think that we're almost to a point where we've seen elves and dwarves in the same way for so long that they either need to be reimagined or left behind. But I still think they're just so classic that I'm okay keeping them. I am a sucker for dwarves and elves and those types of things. So I'm kind of on the fence here.
Here's evidence to your side. Here's the one nugget where I was leaning on keeping it. The biggest advantage of classic fantasy creatures and races is it's established. Mm-hmm. You can focus your time on the individual characters. You can focus your time on the story, versus if you are creating brand new creatures, you have to spend a significant amount of time developing them and making them interesting, and you have to do it different enough that people aren't just going, oh, it's an orc clone, or to the point of you might as well just made it an orc if you weren't gonna change it enough. And so there's
you're like, what is a troll?
Yes, a Trolloc is a troll. Yeah, that is what they are. But ultimately, but the thing is, in real time, you can try to lean into the similarities. Like, hey, it's basically an orc. We're gonna call it something else, and that's all it is. And to me, that's basically the same. Like, if you keep the character, like if you have elves in your story, but you call them a Shar, all right, it's still an elf. You just said a different name.
Yeah,
but you're moving on. You're telling a story with them.
Yep.
There's an advantage to that, but to keep, I find the commonality is, hey, we're using elves and dwarves, and now the only thing I see now is let's subvert it. And now it's every time it's subvert, now it's not even subversion
the orcs
anymore.
Are the good guys, or
the orcs are the good guys now, or the elves are just drunk. I'm like, all right, I get it. We went one way, the pendulum went the other. Come on, let's bring it back. And I don't want to see the back. I don't want to see the pendulum go back. I want a different pendulum.
That's fair, and I can agree with all of that. So yeah, that's a good perspective. Austin, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, a lot of it is the Tolkien shadow argument here of it's not even that you certainly you can have elves and orcs and dwarves in these books, but you're going to have it's breached into a cultural phenomenon now of where everyone's imagining the Tolkien elf or
Yeah.
imagining the Tolkien dwarf and all of the attributes we give to that. So it's almost a case of like I want human beings in all in fantasy stories, like from now to the end of time. However, everyone like when a human being, like just a person, is in a book, we're like, okay, I know what a human being is. Like in the
Yeah.
same way, we know what an elf or dwarf is. So I almost look at it like if your purpose is world building or making the race interesting, I don't know if there's too much more interesting stuff that can happen. Like there can be with an elf's life, or like what was it, Freeren's one of the stories of looking at an elf living forever and how does it grapple with seeing people pass away. Like you can have interesting story concepts, but the fact that it's an elf doesn't make it more interesting. It could be a spray, it could be a la la la, it could be whatever. It's
Yeah.
just that
Well,
yeah.
you bring up a really interesting point of, I think human beings like that, like of course we always identify, but when Tolkien created his world, there is a sense of fantasy when it was first written. These elves and dwarves feel unfamiliar from
Yep.
humans because they're
Yep.
different than us. They have different cultures. Because we don't know them and they're unfamiliar, it feels like the fantastical.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that elves, dwarves, all of these are so known, it becomes a little
Human.
less
Yeah.
fantastic. They become like, because they're familiar, I don't see them as fantastical, which one makes Freerin work. Freerin would not work if elves was something fresh and new. The whole series is deliberately pretty derivative in the sense of its world building and like it's elves, it's dwarves, like there's nothing subversive about anything about the world building. Does that deliberately. Of this is familiar. It's trying to make you feel like connect
Skip
with
past that stuff.
humans.
Yeah.
Skip past that. So this is a familiar story, a familiar on loss and like human connection, and it uses that familiarity well. And so that's kind of my thought of like at a certain point, elves and dwarves are just not as fantastical anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what gets into the trope of it, right? Is the trope of elves and dwarves and vampires. They're just so well known that, like you said, Rich, even if you subvert those expectations, you're subverting what's already known. Like it's not like, yeah. So I'm okay to leave this
Question for
one.
you.
Yeah.
What do you think about dragons? Because
Mm,
everyone knows a dragon.
dude, don't get me started on dragons, okay? I just
Dragons are always cool.
I haven't released this video yet, but I recorded a video talking about ranking different fantasy creatures and monsters and those types of things. And the top tier was legendary, and then I had epic and like cool or whatever. I struggled where to put dragons because they belong in legendary. They belong in that top tier, but I've seen them so much, and I feel like I feel the same way about dragons as I do elves and dwarves, where I feel like they've been done to death. Where like, even though they're awesome, I will always love seeing a dragon on the page. I'm not saying that, but it's getting to the point where maybe we can try something else for a bit. There's so many cool creatures out there that we could see and explore that have cool aspects and elements to them. But I would put dragons in this same category because it is, like you said, a common developed trope species creature. And I think that I've seen enough of it. Again, I wouldn't complain if I saw a dragon. I think that's why people lean
Maybe
on
in the
dragons.
same way you wouldn't complain if you saw a horse riding in the battle, right? It's a horse.
I wouldn't. Yeah.
Cool. Oh my god, horse. Yeah. But
I wouldn't
then
even necessarily complain about elves or dwarves either. Like,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's like you said, it's not fantastical to Rich's point. It's just not, it's
Yeah,
not
to me,
giving me anything.
it's not a feature or a bug. It just is
Mhm.
now. It's
Yes.
it exists and cool. What do you do with it now?
Yep.
That's the question. So as the trope itself, I don't think that trope in itself elevates the story. Other things surrounding that trope elevate the story. And that's why I would say pass for my thought, is because that doesn't, like the coming of age, which we were debating, but I think that elevates the story, whereas this one doesn't right now, unless we get proven wrong by the next Tolkien, George R. R. Martin, someone that does something so different. that it rejuvenates the idea. But right
Yeah,
now, that's not there.
I agree. And so I think that for this trope, common races, I think that for now we leave it behind and hopefully we can start to see some new epic things come as a result of that, some new races, some new species, some new ideas that kind of freshens up the space a little bit. So I think
We've
that's what
changed
we'll
your
say for that
mind.
one. Well, like
You've
I said,
changed.
I was already kind of leaning. I like I said, I'll never complain about those things, which is why I lean
Yeah.
towards like keep. Like I'll never complain about elves or dwarves or dragons, but I definitely would also like to see some new things. So I would say yes, you pulled me into the other lane, but I was on the fence, so it just took a light
Okay.
shove to get me over the edge.
All right.
So
We didn't need a "This is Sparta," right? It was
yeah,
just like a
that's the
"Hey,
coming
this
of
is
age
Sparta."
level that you
That
would
was it.
need. Yeah.
Got it.
So the next trope that we're going to talk about is I feel like it's one that's very common, and I don't even know if I could call it a trope because it's so encompassing, but it's miscommunication. So anytime, and I think this can cover a wide spectrum, which is why I think this is maybe going to be an interesting conversation. But for miscommunication, is that something that we're tired of seeing? Are there better ways to show conflict, to show tension, to make reveals than through miscommunication? So miscommunication is the trope. Are we keeping or are we leaving behind? Think about it. 3, 2, 1. Okay, yeah. I think we're all relatively, for me at least, a little bit sick of this as a trope.
Yeah, I'm not just pass. I'm like hard pass. Like,
Okay.
please leave it alone.
Yes.
God, to me it almost feels like lazy writing. Actually, no. It 9 times out of 10, I think it's lazy writing. It's to create conflict where
Mm-hmm.
the author is not willing to give actual conflict, not willing to have characters actually disagree, actually have differing worldviews or perspectives. It's
Yep.
nope. They actually both agree. They're both good. They both have the same values. They just how tragic that they
Haven't talked it out.
misunderstood each other.
They just didn't say
I
it out
hate
loud.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate
Yeah.
it. I want it gone. I don't even know if it really should be there in the first place. I can't think of a time it was actually good.
It's
In
the
gen-
same complaint that we sometimes have for if there's a now it certainly depends on the story. There's again with miscommunication can be done well, but sexual assault to automatically make someone a bad guy
Yep.
is a type of conflict introduced in books where it's okay, I got it, that's the bad guy. And sometimes it could feel like lazy writing of you couldn't find another way to make the bad guy look bad other than you did something so heinous. Like, okay, got it, bad guy. I'm rooting for the person who's against sexual assault. Got it.
yeah.
So sometimes it's just a fast track way to get that done, and there's way more creative routes. Even though the first place my mind goes with miscommunication, where it's done very well, is like comedies, right? Of when two characters are talking about the same thing, but they literally mean something else. So like My Cousin Vinny comes to mind of where you're talking about you're talking about the private parts when one thinks you're talking about that can be a funny miscommunication of like, oh, got it. I'm with it because the characters think they're talking about this, but they actually mean that. Like it's very useful in writing, but it's just we've seen so many bad examples. I know with all the stuff we've read, and you're not in your head, Vest, so I'm sure you've seen
Okay.
plenty of poor examples of this.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, now you two were such proponents and defenders of of age stories, but where is miscommunication the most prevalent in stories? It's always coming of age because they don't know how to communicate because they're not old enough or they don't understand whatever it may be. Miscommunication is almost hand in hand, always goes with coming of age. So I'm glad we got to this trope. You agree with me on it because it goes back to the other one.
Oh, the thing is, yeah, no, I get it. It's more acceptable in a coming of age story because it is like part of it of
Yep.
a someone is young, inexperienced, like yes, but even then, it's like, come on, really? That's all? That's all you could figure out? No,
Yep.
yeah, no, I'm not a big not a big fan of it at all.
Yeah.
There's so many other ways to do it.
There's just better, like you said, there's better ways to develop a story and to get the reader on board. And I think it just makes you more memorable and exciting to read if you can showcase your skill as a writer in other ways than just like talking past each other, which I think is annoying. I think we would rather, like Rich said, see different ideas clashing, have reasonable arguments for both of those ideas, and not reach an understanding. That creates great conflict and tension. So
the exception to that is, to me, if it goes over the top of, because there is an idea about human beings not understanding each other. Like, that is why does the world not live in harmony? Because we talk past each other.
Yes.
What I am specifically against is it being used as a way for the plot to continue. The plot wouldn't really work without it. The reason I say this is Wheel of Time, one, does a lot of tropes where if it just did the trope but didn't lean heavy and actually commit to the bit, I wouldn't like it. Like, miscommunication is a huge part of Wheel of Time, but that's why I like it. It's not used in the sense of, oh, I need to get around a plot detail. No, that is why the entire series exists. It is a feature of the world. Like, it is exploring the idea of like these large scale events happening because of miscommunication, rather than, oh, these characters would get along, I don't know how to write myself out of this corner. Miscommunication. That's the kind I don't like.
That is another reason I do hate Wheel of Time, is it's so prevalent in all the books.
Yep.
Where, especially between men and women, where I guess that's the push and pull. But to me, it's just like, it does lean into that miscommunication type where it needs to be there in order to make 14 books.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I despise that. And I'm just like, there's so many more interesting ways to write this. And also with the miscommunication itself, exactly what you're saying, Rich. The problem is where if it gets frustrating, right? If you're going, if it's no longer like the tension isn't there, the intrigue, it's like, if I'm feeling as a reader just like apathetic, that's where it fails. But clearly it does work too, because there's plenty of Wheel of Time fans who love that stuff.
The thing is like what you guys are saying, I almost am on the opposite side, I think, where I would rather miscommunication be minor, like on a minor scale, like Rich said, like I would rather it be day-to-day type of a miscommunication, because it does happen, maybe create some small conflict between characters. What I don't like is the large-scale miscommunication where if we had just talked to each other, we could have saved so-and-so from certain death. Like, I can't stand that type, because I'm like, this is such an easy thing to resolve. And as a result of you not resolving it, this was the consequence. And it's usually a significant consequence. That I don't like. But when it's like minor, like, oh, these small miscommunications are causing some friction in this relationship, I'm okay with that more than I am the broader theme or scale of miscommunication.
Well, there's also a good sense of like, there is a difference between miscommunication in the sense of, a character says something and they didn't word it properly. And that's the miscommunication. Like, oh, both characters are thinking something else, and it's like this dialogue pass between. I think miscommunication is also very different of if you frame it of, you understand that their worldview, that each side is operating on a completely different set of facts. And from that is miscommunication bills of they are actually speaking honestly with each other. They understand their point in the moment, but because they're operating from different worldviews, there's a miscommunication.
Yeah.
That I find more interesting, and the reason why I like Wheel of Time. It is not just, oh, we're talking past each other. It's, no, I have a completely different perspective than you, based on X, Y, and Z. And so when I'm telling you something and then you go, you're crazy, what the hell are you talking about? Because A, B, and C actually happened. That is far more interesting than the whole trope of like, someone says a line like, oh, man, we're bringing up all the movies, but like Wuthering Heights in the movie was something like, oh, it would shame me if I married what's his name, and he's listening at the door and goes, oh, I'm so sad, and he runs away, and then she goes, but I love him anyway, and I'll do it anyway because I love him.
Yep.
Oh no! If only he stayed for 30 seconds. Ah, the miscommunication.
You would have heard the second part, right?
Uh-huh.
That's what I don't like.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Also,
specifically.
there's a big difference between miscommunication and not communicating. So the books I love, like Sword of Kaigen and The Poet Empress, have characters that are not communicating, which is very
Yeah.
different than miscommunicating. Because if like somebody's not opening up, or it's a character who's a part of them, they're keeping things within, and you're discovering why is that person not like to communicate? Why is their worldview like that? That's different than the miscommunication is you know, the example with Wuthering Heights or something, you're saying something, you're actually saying something out loud, and then like someone misses a part of it, or it's something is verbally said that is acknowledged out loud that is then miscommunicated, rather than the character who's maybe more withholds themselves, or they have an interesting mystery past, they're trying to cover something up. That's very
Hmm.
different. I think those are two
Yeah.
different tropes.
I completely agree. So I think that miscommunication as a whole, we can leave it behind because it's something that has to be handled very delicately and be done
Oh yeah.
very well for it to work with a story. So if
Oh
you
yeah.
think you can just use it as a mechanic of the story quickly to get out of something, I don't think it works. And I think that's what ends up happening a lot of times. So we're going to leave it behind. If you think you can tackle miscommunication, do it really well. But yeah, so moving on to the next trope. This is something that I think we see more in movies in particular, so than we do in books, but I have seen it in books as well. And that is the unretired badass trope. So these are things like Liam Neeson in Taken, coming out of retirement to save his daughter, John Wick, Nobody. Like the movies where they have left the life behind of crime, of being an assassin, of being elite, to go settle on the mundane. But because something happens, they now have to reemerge as that proclaimed badass and solve problems. So, with that trope, is that something we want to keep or pass on and leave behind? So, I'll give you a second to think about it. And three, two, one. All right, yes. Well, I mean, we're all guys here, so maybe this would have been a little bit different if we had a woman as part of the panel. But I think this is a trope that intrinsically speaks to men. But let's get your guys' thoughts on it.
Never die. I want more. Double
Yeah.
down, really. We don't have enough. That is as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm.
Like be wary the old man in a career where the young die. Like it's just always that's always the best part of like finding out like a career, like the soldiers were like, you know, all of the soldiers died, the youth died, like the retired badass of like, how did this old guy make it through? Because
Yes.
he's that good. So many of my favorite stories are that way. I am a huge fan. One,
Yep.
that's also just true historically. You look at history tales and about like I've been going on a recent recent military history kick, and hearing about some of these like significant figures in the American military. Of it's quite literally like the old guy that just is like they brought out like man all they bring out the old guy because like oh man all the new bucks don't know how we need to train the young bucks. They bring out
Hmm.
the old guy and he just smokes him. Like his experience just is
You
not
mean Top
even.
Gun Maverick?
There's that.
You
Yes.
mean F1?
Yes,
Yeah.
true. Top Gun Maverick is real. Do you understand of like that's so true. There was a case of fairly recently. I'm trying to remember the very specifics, but basically, in American military complex, we developed the fighter jet to basically we stopped dogfighting. Like the strategy instead of hey, let's actually fight with guns in the air and get close to the other fighter and let's dogfight it out. Basically, the American military decided, what if we just made better radars and we go faster, and basically we can hit our enemy before they even see us. Therefore, we don't need to dogfight. And so that was the running strategy going forward. But then the Korean War happened, and due to politics and all this different mumbo jumbo, they had to dogfight. There was no, the standard operation was no longer applicable. they had to bring in the old guy that could still dogfight, like an old dogfighting ace, and all the young bucks who just don't know how to dogfight because they've never been taught. Anyway, very fascinating tale. It's my favorite. It's my favorite trope, and I want more of it.
Completely agree. The coming out of retirement is just so, it resonates so much because of, like you said, Rich, it's the person that you need to be most afraid of is the person who leaves that life behind for a life of peace, and you disrupt that person's peace. Like killing the dog in John Wick and him just going on an absolute rampage is the most like delicious, epic. I don't need any story. I don't need any plot. I don't need any character development. I have enough from that little snippet that I'm sold in for the rest of the story as a result of that. And I don't know that there's any other trope in fantasy or any type of storytelling that gets me as hooked as that trope. Like Austin, like you were saying with the Avatar: The Last Airbender, when Iroh like it starts training in the prison.
Oh,
that's like one of the most epic scenes, and it lasts for like 10 seconds. It's like we know he's the most epic warrior, and he just acts like this bumbling, tea-loving uncle who doesn't care about anything, but you take everything away from him, and now he has forced to use his fire bending, and it's just one of those things that's just so memorable, so epic, and it's just, like I said, a tiny snippet of the overall story.
Well, Vess, I know why you like it, because it speaks to older people and not these young kids you hate, because you still have something to look forward to.
Yes.
You prick, okay? So I get why
that's exactly my point.
I
get why you like it.
Well, it is quite literally the opposite of it is the opposite story of the coming of age story. Of the coming of age is young person with all this potential, who will they become? And it's their growth to becoming something that no one else would have thought of. And the retired badass is starting in a place of like, there is still character growth, I think really well done, of like, they are retired. They're out of the game. They're a little rusty, but they know what they're capable of. And it's finding your way back to an identity that you used to have. So it's, if the coming of age is from young buck to hero, it's up, and that just went, all right, camera. Anyway. But no, do you get what I mean? Of like, now it's, hero to, or, retired back to hero. But it's the reverse. I
mean, take like Gran Torino as a movie too. Like that's your retired badass in a sense. There's so many examples, and in books we have the one
Joe
behind
Abercrombie.
Yeah, Joe Abercrombie.
With Logan Nine Fingers.
Yep, with Logan Nine Fingers, and you get a sense of the. There's a sense of, I guess it's your old person coming of age in a way too, because it's, you still have more to learn in your old age. Or so with a lot of the great retired badass stories have the young buck learn something and the old retired guy, like, learn something as well. It's awesome. It's such a fun.
Like even movies that aren't necessarily fantasy, like Rocky Balboa, right? When he comes back to fight the young person, like that's an epic story. Like, and like you said, that involves the young person who's rising and the old person who's coming to show them like how we did it in the old days. Like, it's just so much fun. And I think that there's so much potential there. And we just really, I don't feel like have explored it nearly enough. And I, like Rich said, I want to see it 10 times more. I want to see a million more stories about these unretired legends that are coming out of the woodwork to just teach some people a lesson. So yes, I'm glad that we can all agree on that.
Here's a direction that I really want to see. Is I think the overwhelming majority of the direction is like, we're excited that the badass is coming out. I think it'd be like, we get to see it a little bit with a character I've already mentioned, but I guess I shouldn't for spoiler's sake. Is I want more of like the badass comes out, but there's a cost. There's a reason the badass went in the closet. And like, there's a reason the life was left behind.
Yep.
I
Yep.
want more of that. Like with the John Wick, and I feel comfortable saying like these movies because like spoilers, it doesn't feel as impactful with
Yeah,
when we're
fair.
talking about John Wick. But
He
we're
unretires in the first 10 minutes of the movie. Also,
I know. But no, John Wick, you're like, oh my god, hey, yeah, come out of retirement, awesome. And like, they're supposed to be like, oh, there's a reason why he went into the, you know, there's a reason why he hung up the guns.
Mm.
But it's not that explored. Like, it's not. I want to see a little bit of the old man is gaining back his rhythm, but also becomes a little bit more disgusted with himself of like, I'm picking up what I left behind for a reason. I'm becoming who I hated again.
Yeah.
Mm.
I want that little
That would
bit.
make for a great villain story as well. Like that you bring this person who used to be good and they descend into a villain arc. That would also be an interesting exploration in a story. Or a villain becoming an unretired badass. And then you have to figure out how to deal with this evil person
Oh
who's
yeah,
epic. Like that would also, we see it so
it's a
much from
great
the
idea.
hero perspective. Seeing it from the villain perspective, I think would also be super cool. And like scary. Like if you want to talk about feeling fear as a reader, that would be one way to establish fear of like, holy cow, please don't let this guy ever come back.
It's a great idea.
The best thing I think retired badass is like when it's done well. There's a key element I think that's required, and it's mainly the abandonment of ego. That
Mm-hmm.
typically like the old badass, like he's been through the ringer, he doesn't have the ego, he doesn't need to show off. That youthful pride is gone.
Mm,
And
yeah.
there's a lot of like there's not a lot of fanfare. I'm not gonna like show up. Like there's the old guy that is holds on to his pride too long of like, ah, your time is gone, old man. And that's the sentiment. The
Yeah.
badass is the one that says, maybe there's something to learn. I have nothing to prove. And so that's what it makes, like, I think a good villain. A
Yeah.
lot of times the villains are overcome because of their ego, their pride.
That's very
I
true.
think what's a lot scarier is the villain who's like, I have nothing to prove. I have a job to do.
I just
And
want to
so, like,
accomplish this goal. Yeah.
yeah, and so like scenes that would have been like, oh, I'm so angry and I have to stretch out this scene. The retired villain just like, nope, move on to next
Yeah.
task. It just efficiency, not
Yeah.
even really emotional about it. Yeah.
Yep. So I definitely think we can see a lot more. I'm glad that we all agree that we want to see more of that in the future. I think there's tons of potential in the fantasy space. So, let's see some more of that moving forward. Moving on to the next trope, we have magic being lost or dying. So this is something like in Lord of the
Mm.
Rings, they've destroyed the ring. Frodo is going with the elves. They're moving on. The age of men is coming. So like that type of a sentiment of like the magic is no longer a part of this world. We're moving forward into a new age that no longer it's not as prevalent. Maybe it still exists, but it's not
Mm.
like a main feature of the world. Is that something that we want to smash or pass as a trope? And so I'll give you a second to think about it.
Mm.
I have to think
Mm.
about this one. I think for me, okay, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Austin, I'm the same way. I'm kind of like,
I guess I'll
if
agree
I
with you guys
had to
for now. But
if I had
Austin,
to pick,
yeah. But like, what's your what are you struggling with? Why are you kind of on the fence with it?
I'm on the fence because, like, obviously you're bringing up Lord of the Rings, one of the best, right? So that's why I'm like, oh, that's so good. Um, I like it as an idea of, hey, the magic's dying, and what are we going to like? What are the consequences of that? What's the world going to look like? Um, but for some reason, my mind leans to if I had to choose between the two, right? If I had to choose between the magic's dying or the weird stuff from the past, the magic's returning, I think the latter has a little
Yeah,
bit more excitement if I was
absolutely.
comparing the two.
Yep.
So that's where I'm thinking of what I think I like the idea of the things like from thousands of years ago or mythos or legend are starting to come back and we don't understand it and we have to find out more. There's like a mystery there. Uh, I guess there's a little bias in my head where I think if the magic's dying, it's like, oh, well, now it's going to get boring, right? Well, what's next
Yeah.
now? And that's it's just that base instinct, or even though obviously Lord of the Rings does it the best. But yeah, that's where it's coming from.
Well,
That's how I feel too, where it's like I feel like the magic, if it comes to an end, the story comes to an end. So in that sense, that's why Lord of the Rings works, is because
Yeah.
this is the definitive end of this era or this story. So it works and it kind of has that closure to it. But for me, magic is what makes fantasy so exciting. So to think that magic is disappearing or that's part of it, unless they're trying to save it from being lost,
Sure.
and that's the thing that we're working with. I don't love it because I want magic as part of my world. And I'm with you, Austin. I would rather it be rediscovered, like in the Stormlight Archive or something like
Yes, yeah,
that, where
Stormlight, yeah.
we're learning more about this lost system. I much prefer that than it slowly being lost.
Yep.
Mainly, I just don't like I don't like as much the tail end of magic is basically gone, but we get to know that magic was there and it's not really there anymore.
Mm.
I would prefer the more like magic is going away, but like there's still some gas in the tank. There's a story to be said of like there's not much left. There's a story of like the magic is going away, but we have to beat the big bad. We have to find the last remnants of magic to like save the day. And maybe it's not as grand. Like we're pulling for scraps
Yeah.
out of something. There's something more interesting about that than knowing the cool, fantastical history is gone behind us, and I don't get to see any of it. That's
Yeah.
you get what I mean? Like the reason why Lord of
Yeah.
the Rings is so great is you get to see it dying. It's not like, oh, it's the magic is dead. It's dying. You
Yeah.
still get to be around the elves. You get to still be with the Ents. You see many of them dead, but like you're there and you get to grieve with the magical characters that the magic is dying.
Kind of like a dying Earth trope, you know. You get to
Yeah.
it's not the Earth is like, oh, we got one day left, but you get to see the final years or whatever it might be in the story. Yeah, I like the way you put that. I agree.
Yeah. If the magic is going, I want to grieve with the world and characters, not hey, there was cool stuff in a different story that you don't get to read. Like, no.
Well, I think that
fun.
to your point, that's kind of the feeling of those types of books and stories and movies is it's like almost has this heaviness to it of like, like there's nothing we can do. This is going away. Like, yes, they're scrambling. Yes, they can use it in creative ways or try and find new solutions. So it's still interesting, but it's like this weight as you're reading or watching where it's like almost a hopelessness, which I tend to not enjoy that as much, which is why I think it works maybe better for like grimdark type stories or something like that that explores more of the gritty realities. But yeah, I think that for me, it's just I don't love that as much. Even being in there, like you said, experiencing the death and the dying of the magic. Even then, I'm like, no, like this is so cool. Why does it have to go away? Like, so yeah, I think I struggle with that aspect of it. I think it can work. I think it works for that audience that likes that type of feeling as they're reading or watching. So it has a place, but for me, I would rather not experience that.
I tend to agree. Yeah, that's the only way I do like it. It's like preference. I want the magic to still be around or rediscovering magic. But below that is I get to experience the death of magic.
Mm-hmm.
And then below that is magic is basically dead, but I get to hear about all the cool things and never see it.
Yep. Completely agree.
What an incredible pull the question that lasted with me for books and Stormlight is what happened to the Knights Radiant, right?
Yes.
Like that just as a question, I'm going, there's so much mystery, there's intrigue, I'm left out of the loop. Tell me more.
Yep.
Tell me more. And that's why I just prefer that that angle of the stories because it feels like
Like,
there's more.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Imagine the story being told from the Knights Radiant's perspective, right? And we see
yeah,
them throw down their shard blades for that final time. It'd be like, like we're
right,
done. So yeah, I think that looking retroactively at it being lost, I'm all for that. But
right.
that's the rediscovery, and so yeah, I think it's a hard sell for sure. Um,
Yeah.
so I think we'll just do two more tropes. Like I said, there's a huge list that we could pull
Oh
from,
yeah.
but for the sake of time, we're just going to do two more. And I want to get one. I'm very passionate about romance in fantasy books. I have very strong feelings about it. I want to
Yeah.
get at least one romance trope into this discussion. Again, it's probably going to be biased because we have a panel of men, but I think it's still worth discussing. So the most common trope that I think is very beloved in the romantasy community especially is enemies to lovers. Okay? We've all seen this, we've experienced it, maybe read some of it. Is this something we want to see more of in the stories that we read, the shows that we watch, or do we want to see more creative things done with love stories? Again, this is a big selling point. When you see people try and sell their books, they will often tote that this is an enemies to lovers story. But for you two, is this something you would smash or would you pass on this particular trope? I'll give you a second to think about it. 3, 2, 1. Okay, we've got some mixed opinions in the bag, so I think we'll
Hmm.
first turn it over to Rich since Austin, you're kind of waffling. We'll let Rich make his point first, and then we'll see if I can sway you in the other direction.
Awesome.
I want it done well. Every time I've read it, it's been done poorly when I know there's like conceptually it makes sense. Like I understand the whole appeal of it. Of the whole idea is like especially like from it typically women are typically reading like the female lead character of your enemy respects you. And so like maybe these other people are nice to you, maybe they're kind, but they don't respect you. And so your enemy by nature of their being, if they're your enemy, they respect you. And that turning to love makes complete sense. I understand it. It never seems to be actual enemies to lovers. It's either
Mm,
a miscommunication or the male enemy has always really loved the character but has to pretend to be an enemy. Uh, there's not an actual like no, they are enemies. They actually do like there's
yeah,
a hard disagreement and they're forced to get to know each other. They're forced to
interesting.
overcome their difficulties together. I want actual enemies to lovers, not
Mm.
this
So you want to keep the
wishy-washy
trope
fake.
so that you can see it in action. That's why you're a proponent of keeping
Yes.
it.
Right.
Yes.
Oh,
It is
interesting.
I feel everything else that I've read of enemies to lovers have been a pale imitation of what the trope should be.
Very interesting. On the other hand of this argument, uh, for my audience, they know I'm not a fan of romance. Like even in the slightest degree, I will skip pages that even like the two people are flirting. See ya. I'm off. I'm not reading that. Get me to war. I'm not reading this love story. So I have a really hard time with romance, but specifically with enemies to lovers, my issue is Rich definitely nailed it. Like I rarely feel like it has any depth to it where like there is, and maybe it's because one book isn't enough time. Maybe it needs to be stretched out over a trilogy to really get the sense of these are enemies that are slowly learning to respect and care about each other, or thrown into a situation where they become uh lovers or whatever. But I think it's such a unnecessary trope. Maybe that's my issue with it. Like I think it's only there for the same reason miscommunication is there. It's there to create tension, it's there to create conflict, and it's there to serve a romance plot. That's it. Like I really oftentimes don't feel like it's applicable to the story that I'm reading. It's they crafted a story around a trope rather than a trope working with the story. So that's
Yeah.
why I
Well
don't want to
said.
see
Yeah.
it. I don't think that it can be done well. So I'm ready to move past it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's very well said. I think with the whole you guys described it well. So I'll just say maybe to add on to that, the enemies to lover, I really dislike it, especially when it is extremely predictable, where you know where it's what is going to happen. You've seen this story happen before, and you get the point already.
Yep.
Um, I think when I've also teetered with this back and forth a bit because I think there's some enemies to lovers stories, but the way I don't know if enemies to lovers is the right term. I've read some fantastic enemies to empathize books,
Mm-hmm.
enemies to platonic or enemies to
Yeah.
blank that have done very well. Mentioned some of the
Yes.
books earlier in this, but I don't want to spoil stuff like that. So there's something there. There's definitely something there, but is it what I'm questioning? Is it one of those tropes where it's just uh, it's always going to be typecast into that kind of story? Because I guess a lot of the enemies to lovers were thinking, like, for example, your wife loves romances. I'm
Yep.
sure, so she would probably love that trope a lot. Have
Yep.
you heard like
Ab-
what is some of that the stuff that she loves about it that you've heard?
That's a great question. I think that they just she likes the again, the tension that comes with that, and knowing that these two are going to get together, but right now they
Gotcha.
don't like each other. My wife is also very picky about her stories and romances as well.
Mhm.
So she has a lot of the same concerns that we do, where it's like, this doesn't feel natural. And she doesn't read
Mhm.
romantasy. She's like a full, like, romance
Okay.
reader. So she's tried to read romantasy, but she can't get over the fantasy elements. But yeah, so she likes more of like, um, enemies to lovers when they can't be together socially. Like one is a king
Ah,
and the other is a maid. And so they aren't necessarily enemies, but like they're just on different levels, and slowly over time they build a relationship. But they're kind of enemies in the sense that like they're different classes or something like that. So that is what she looks for in a romance, and what she likes to read. But I don't even know if I could classify that as an enemies to lovers. So
Yeah.
I get you. Yeah. It is with all the romance tropes like unrequited love or love at first sight or friends, lovers, whatever it
mhm.
is. I think it's always the most, I guess, controversial or like the most varying opinions because everyone knows like what their own romantic feelings are, like, hey, what love is to them. And
Yeah,
then it's so clearly able to be done very well or very poorly because we feel like we're all experts in our own life at like what love is, I guess.
yeah,
So if we're going like if this enemy's lover is portrayed this way and going like you're speaking about love and that's actually lust, right? That's actually not what love
yes,
is, you idiot,
yes,
right? So a lot of what will happen with those types of stories and just romance in general, we can just attribute that and go, hey, that's not what it is. You're getting the actual theme wrong. And that's where it gets
hmm
frustrating. So the enemy's the lover, if it can somehow navigate like a genuine relationship that we feel is okay, genuine, then it can get pulled off very well. I think it's just very hard to do. And maybe
yeah,
this isn't the case. I shouldn't say very hard to do, very hard to pull off for me, whereas it's a very popular trope that people love. And
yeah,
I also love, but I love an enemies lover, especially I like with the book I'm writing, it's not enemies to lover, but it's like the um the making fun of each other, the push and
yeah.
pull. The
The
thing is like
banter I'm okay with. I like
banter, right.
banter and a
Right.
little bit of like teasing or a little bit of competition or conflict that way. I'm okay
Yeah.
with that. But when you say the word enemies, I expect, like
That's
Rich
it.
said,
Yeah.
I expect there to be enemies, like with
Yeah.
reasons for you to be enemies. Like you killed my dad type of an enemy. Like how are you going to reconcile that and become lovers? Like that's a very difficult thing to pull off. So
Yep.
if it can be
I
done, like Rich said,
I
maybe I'd
have
like to see it. I don't know.
I think a great idea for a story of it's basically a trilogy of the first book is your romantasy where the female lead character is like the co-captain of a pirate ship. And the enemy of that book, who is the captain of the pirate ship, is at the end of the book, she successfully throws a mutiny with the love interest and basically kicks the pirate off the boat, and they abandon him on an island, and it's like, okay, she has won the day. That's the romantasy element, and that's her book, book 1. Book 2 picks up, and it's completely different genre. It's a revenge story from the pirate captain that was abandoned, and now he's like, I'm on a quest of revenge to get my ship back, to kill my co-captain, and he goes off. Third book of they now, like, through happenstance of like, he finally kind of gets it back, but now there's a third enemy, and they have to work together, and that's when they become the lovers. Like, that's my
all right,
enemies
so
to lovers idea.
authors out there, take notes. Like, you've just been gifted an idea. Like, you make that work.
You get the girlfriends, the wives, to read book 1, and they're like, I love it. Good old pirate romantasy type of, like, it's a pirate romance. Awesome.
Let's abandon our readers.
And then book 2 is just for the boys. All the girlfriends' wives gave this book to them. Like, go ahead, let's read this series together. And they're like, it's fine. I like it well enough. And then they get to book 2, and they're like, yeah, this is the series for me.
The wives will give us a summary of book 1. The husbands will give a summary of book 2, and then we'll read book 3 together to see what the resolution is.
See, now that's maybe even a more interesting way of, it's write it in such a way that you give the person who's a fan of romance book 1, you give the person who's a fan of more action revenge book 2, but they can be read out of order. And then book 3 is the sequel to both books, and where it's a dual POV.
Maybe in the same book too, there's this one show that has such a unique concept where it's a sitcom from the husband's point of view, right? And it's a fun sitcom. And from the wife's point of view, it's a horror story of like, she hates being here. Possibly with you could mix a romantasy horror or something like that, where from it could be the guy or girl's point of view is a romance and falling in love or whatever the push and pull is, and the other character's point of view is a different genre from their point of view. So the interesting thing is just bouncing off and getting this romance feel, and then getting, whether we want to put horror, we could put murder mystery, we could put slasher, we could put coming of age if you want. I don't know, but
no, we don't want that.
Yeah, I guess we don't do that. We could put a retired badass. Basically, whatever the opposite from the romance side is, you get both ends, and you see the conclusion from both the, like, let's just use horror because it's such an opposite genre. You get the horror ending and you get the romance ending, and then, that could be fun. Honestly,
wouldn't that be so interesting?
Oh my God, Rich, you know which movie that is?
Both people reading the same book of, like, book 0.5, book 0.6 or whatever, but each person not reading the other book, then reading the sequel book together, and coming away with it of, like, almost completely different perspectives. Rich, because they don't know the context of the other one.
We saw it recently. Send Help.
True. Yes. But imagine you get the other guy's tale. Like, and so,
no. I get you.
Yes.
It plays with that. Like, that's a fantastic. That's why I loved that movie, because I didn't know how it was going to end. I didn't know, like, are they going to end up together? Are they going to kill each other? What the hell's happening? Like, it was, oh my God. If you have not seen it, Vez, or any of your audience, it's a Sam Raimi film. Sam Raimi film where this coworker, this woman who's been working at a company for 7 years, working her ass off to get this promotion to be, I think, the vice president of the company. And she's quirky, but she runs that company essentially. She's needed. And then the CEO of the company is retiring, and we're like, hey, he wants to promote her. She's the hardest worker. But before doing so, he gives the reins to his son to be the new CEO. And his son's this trust fund kid in his 30s who, as soon as he gets in this position, he goes, yeah, screw the lady who's like hurt. She's got stuff in her teeth. She's weird and quirky. I'm giving it to my frat guy who's been working here for 6 months, and promotes him to the vice presidency. And so it's the two. And then, she's automatic. At first, she thought that this CEO guy was like nice and charming and flirted with her a little bit, but she finds out quickly, like, oh, he's an asshole. And what happens? They're now on a plane ride, going to some event in like China or Bangkok or something. I forget exactly where. And the plane crashes, and the only survivors is her and the CEO, right, on this island. And now it's like, okay, they hate each other, they're enemies. What happens in a Sam Raimi film with this dynamic of a of the coworker who is like she's your survivalist. We find out she's a fan of the show Survivor. And like, yeah, she's like loves all that stuff. And the CEO is this trust fund rich kid who had never worked a day in his life. And so what happens when they're on an island when the power dynamic shifts, and do they fall in love? Or what happens? Oh, what a fun movie! Or the enemies trope is really fun there. I'll just keep it at enemies, though. I won't reveal
that one. Has been on my radar because I like that actor, the Maze Runner actor. I love everything that he's in. Yes,
O'Brien. He is hilarious in the movie.
He's so talented. We need to see him in more stuff because I feel like anytime he pops up, like I will go watch whatever movie it is. So. Yeah, that one I have seen TikToks of, so it's on my radar. But you sold it, so I'll have to actually make it a priority and watch it now. So now, for the last trope that we're going to talk about, I first want to see if there's any tropes that we haven't discussed that you feel very passionate that you want to be discussed in this episode of the trope discussion, or if we just want to go to the next one on the list. But I want to give you a chance if you're like, we haven't talked about this yet. This is your chance.
You already picked up Retired Badass for me. That was necessity. However, the quick aside that we didn't cover is the farm boy trope. Austin, you're wrong. We need more farm boys. Farm boys.
No, we need more farm girls like Poet Empress. Poet Empress did farm girl correctly.
Okay, let's talk about girls. Let's talk about farm. Let's talk about the farm village small town trope. Rich, you said you wanted to keep it.
Is this our last one? Is this our last one?
We can have this be our last. Again, there's so many that we can talk about.
We'll keep it quick. It's coming of age. It's coming of age, but
coming of age. Like I'm gonna pass on that.
I like that the foundation is there of hard worker. Of like, there's a little bit of like, hey, there's the old town wisdom. I like it. It discovering the world.
Is there nowhere else to learn hard work than on a farm? Like, come on. No, there's got to be other place.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, you have it right, Vaz. The difference between a trope and a cliche is more focused and it's the same.
Yes,
it's the same genus. Like the reason that we say like she let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. The reason that is cliche is because it's like AI. It's copycatting. It's doing copy paste with that line that we all know is a specific line. That's where it becomes cliche. A trope would be like the coming of age trope is what I like about the farm boy thing of like, hey, the person's coming of age is the cool thing. Not literally they're a farm boy at another farm. Give me something different. I don't know, like.
We don't need a Luke Skywalker. We don't need an Aragon. We don't need that. Like it's
a Wheel of Time.
Yeah, it's just too. I think cliche is a great word. It's too much, and it's way too identifiable, way too predictable. I'm ready to leave that behind. But
I'm with you. We're passing on that, right, Rich?
No, never. I'm never giving it up. It's home. It's safe. It's mine. It's my happy place.
Yeah, he's wrong in this one. That's okay. You can be wrong about a few things, Rich. That's fine. Austin, are there any tropes that you wanted to hit on before we closed out on this discussion?
I want to hear what your last one was. I'm very curious.
So again, it's a long list, but the last one that I had on here, and this is one, it folds into so many other tropes that I feel like, but what encompasses it is villain redemption arcs. Okay, you could fold morally gray into this, morally ambiguous. Like there's a lot of other tropes that can go into a villain redemption. But for this one, we're just going to talk about a villain who learns his lesson and becomes good. Right? He redeems himself by some of his actions. A classic would be Zuko is probably the most identifiable villain redemption arc. I wouldn't necessarily say he's a hardcore villain, but something like that where someone is identifiably the bad guy and over the course of the story learns the error of his ways, becomes redeemed. Is that something that we want to continue to see, or is that something we think is overdone and we want to leave behind? I'll give you a second to think about it. And 3, 2, 1. Okay. We got a little bit of disagreement here. So
the scale of this is like yes and no. I'm like here,
okay.
some angles like that.
Let's go to you first, Austin. Tell us
Yeah.
what your thought process is for what's kind of
Oh yeah.
putting you on the fence here.
Oh yeah. Rich and I talk about this a bit with the villain redemption, and what I don't like about it is, I'm sorry with what I don't like before because I'm slightly yes. What I don't like about it is that it is the trend now. It is what happens more often than not. The pendulum swinging of where are we as far as how villains are treated. The more morally gray redeem the villain, especially when the villain like is still hateable or it doesn't redeem them well enough. Sometimes it's more fun to just have your charismatic page presence villain who just exudes on page or on screen that makes
Very
them
true.
memorable. Like I think some of the most memorable villains you can think of, you got Darth Vader, Joker, Hannibal
Yeah.
Lecter, like just the pure evil, right? But then at the same time, your villain redemption ones of like you have your
Darth
Jamie
Vader.
Lannister, yeah, yeah, Vader, exactly, Darth Vader. You have your Jamie Lannisters, your Zuko's, etc. So the reason I say like I'm slightly lean for it is I if when done correctly, it's amazing. It's like
Yeah.
it could be so extremely well done to have you empathize for somebody that was actually evil and change the way, and also it's a great character progression from start to finish to see somebody that you did hate and to shift. Like with Joe Abercrombie, great thing about his writing is, hey, you could be changing, like, oh, I like this guy, now I don't, or I don't like this guy, now I do, or whoever it is in the
And that
book.
happens 6 times throughout a book
Exactly.
In the
for
same book,
characters.
yeah.
Yes.
It's
So
amazing.
I just think it's a great skill to have you shift how much if you actually convince the reader with you of, hey, they're now a good person, they're now a bad person. That's just hard to do. And I think it's impressive, which is why I like it. The reason I wouldn't like it is that it's one of those things like if done poorly, it can be just as bad as the miscommunication trope
Yep.
of
I agree.
when it fails, I roll and go, are you kidding me? Like
Yes.
it's a very fine line, and it's
Yep.
going to be really contentious, like if you're having a book discussion about it, whether it was pulled off right. But you're fantastic authors and writers that when pulled off, I mean, some of the most timeless characters you can think of.
Yeah. Great argument. Rich, let's hear your perspective of why you would leave this behind. I'm sure there's elements of what Austin was saying that probably resonates.
The elements of it is there's something very valuable of a character learning that they were wrong, and like that they're like whatever they went through does not justify the evil they emit toward others. What I find with very common nowadays is over empathizing to the point of like it's not the villain's fault that they're this way, and that there's actually good reason why, like, and so you should empathize with all the evil things that they're doing, and there's still that like even if they change their ways, there's still that bitterness inside them that like, but I was wronged.
Yeah.
There's that's what I don't like. I appreciate when a villain accepts the consequences of their villainy and knows like that's the lesson.
Yeah.
For some reason, I feel like a lot of a lot of stories you're seeing nowadays, it's that the villain was misunderstood, or the villain was really wronged, and so that's why the revenge is deserved.
That is why I hate. It's controversial. I hate the Joker. I hate the movie so much.
Oh.
I hate it, and I know it's a well-loved movie.
The Joker, like
No,
with
the
Joaquin
Joker.
Phoenix.
No,
Okay,
not
Joaquin
Keith
Phoenix.
Not Heath Ledger in the Joker.
Okay.
Dark Knight. Like I mean,
Giving the Joker
movie,
an origin story.
yes, the origin story of the Joker,
Yep.
of why. Now it's such a loved movie, but I just can't. I can't with it because of what Rich is saying.
Yep.
Of that feeling like, oh, because they've been wronged, and like empathize with the Joker. That's if it's done incorrectly. There, my God, it's so frustrating.
Because he's supposed to be one of the most depraved characters and most literally insane. So I agree here. I think the distinction is that there's two types of villains. You have the iconic villains, and those are the ones that tend to be, I am a villain no matter what. These are the Jokers. Darth Vader, we could argue, but they're just iconically evil, and that's what gives them their aura
Yeah.
to the story. It's like this is the bad guy. Whereas the villain that has more humanness to them and changes, they are more emotional. They have more of the emotional impact to the story, but they're less iconic, I would say, because they become humanized. And so it's more of like, what do you want your story to accomplish? Do you want an iconic bad guy, or do you want to humanize an opposing side? I think one of the stories that I think does this well, kind of what you were saying, Rich, with um, learning the error of your ways, is like Malice and the Faithful of the Fallen series, where like the friend, I can't remember his name, but the friend of like the main antagonist who thinks they're the chosen one, like he eventually like figures out like slowly over the books, like, oh, like these are actually kind of like some messed up things that we're doing. And but like he's my friend and I believe in him and it must be the way that it is supposed to be. Like I think that is explored really well and to the point where eventually that has its own good resolution to it. Um, so I am torn on this. I like the redemption because I do tend to like those emotional connections to characters that make them feel real. At the same time, as we've been talking, I also love the iconic bad guys. And I think that the iconic bad guy has diminished more than the relatable villain. So
Yeah.
maybe I would switch my opinion on this one to pass, just because I think we need more iconic evil bad guys as opposed to relatable bad guys.
Sure.
I would agree with you 100% there. A lot of it comes down to like intent of do you write the redeemable villain uh out of redemption, like a redemption being a wonderful story, or is it out of justifying evil?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to find that line. And Austin's right on the Joker feels far more about justifying evil than it does. Well, I mean, there is no redemption of it, but like it's supposed to. Oh, like I'm trying to make you sympathize with evil.
Yeah.
That's it. Of just they're like it's like you would also be evil. It's like no, that's not the case. Stop trying to justify evil. Like like
Yeah.
that's I don't know. I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
I think it's a terrible thing to actually tell a story of, and I just find that as a thematically wrong to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think I am actually going to switch my vote on this one to pass, just because. Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes it depends on what type of villain you have. If it's a true villain, I don't think it works. If it's an antagonist, it can work because it's just someone who's
Yeah.
opposing the protagonist, and they can have a lot of wiggle room with that. But if it's a true villain, it's I think
Well,
harder to pull off a redemption arc.
Important
even
aspect
that
is
a true villain can work, but it can't be of you're supposed to sympathize with the villain. Like the villain was right to be a villain. That's I think the
Yeah.
mistake that people are trying to. The reason why Darth
Mhm.
Vader works.
Yes.
Darth Vader being an iconic villain and
Hmm.
also redeemed.
Yeah.
The story is not trying to tell you like Darth Vader had good reasons for being Darth Vader. The prequels, we're setting it aside. We're not thinking about those now. Don't do that.
Hey, I'm a prequel fan,
Tri-
so you got to be careful
I
over
I
here.
am too, but the main thing is
Okay, okay.
why does the first
Nostalgia.
trilogy work? Is because Darth Vader is evil. He is
Yes.
evil. That he is iconic. He has that presence, but ultimately, the end of the story is him being redeemed for his son. Of like
Yeah.
the love of his son, the love of family overcomes his wicked nature.
Hmm.
That is not the story trying to tell us. Oh, Darth Vader had a good reason to be Darth Vader. No, it's not trying to say that at all.
True.
That's what I like about like that's the right method. If you try to backtrack of like, oh, actually, the villain had good reason to be a villain. No, I don't like
It
that.
Yeah.
doesn't it doesn't justify, it should explain. Like with Zuko, it's not justifying, hey, he was right to be like this teenage kid who's hunting the Avatar and he's mean to his uncle and he's pissed off at the world. It's not saying that's just like he's a good person there. It's saying it explains why, because of the abuse from his father is explained. Now, hey, we sympathize, we understand him, but we're like, okay, when he then becomes good, we're like, we're rooting for him because we understand why he was bad, and he now recognizes, oh, I was bad.
Yeah,
that's the arc you need to have.
I think it's also a lot of like the little moments, and like the reason why the Joker doesn't work as much is because it's not like a singular thing and the Joker falling down further and further by their own methods. It's ultimately the Joker is almost never in control of that entire story. He is, every moment that he is brought around, it's just people being awful to him. So it's the world is evil toward him, and then finally he is evil to someone else. But at no point does he make like really the wrong decision very often. It's just like
he's
him
forced
killing
into...
he's forced. The world is evil to him constantly. Versus Zuko, of you get a moment of like his father is wicked toward him. You have that moment where a lot of this happens. But you do see people are kind to him. And he makes the choice of like, oh, I'm going to I'm going to project my anger out toward people who want to help me. That is interesting, rather than just going like, the world is evil to him.
Yep.
That doesn't work as well.
I agree. I think that there's a lot of potential. This is why this is a trope that's hard for me, because I feel like there is a lot of potential here, and it does fold in a lot of other tropes, which is why it's kind of a tough one to nail down on this one specifically. But yeah, I think this discussion has been insightful to kind of nail down what it means to do a villain redemption arc and how to do it well. If you do insist on doing it, how it can be done well, and deciding what type of villain you want in your story as well, I think is important. But yeah, I think that's a valuable things to take into consideration. So, but that's pretty much going to do it for today, just because, you know, we could talk probably for another 4 hours, but I'm not going to hold you hostage like that. You know, that's too much. But it's been a lot of fun to have you two on to talk about these tropes. It's fun to soundboard some of these tropes, because obviously, I mean, if you hadn't come on, my audience would be convinced that coming of age is time to hit the road. But, you know, now they can have confidence that it can stick around. So it's good to have those perspectives. So I really appreciate you two coming on and sharing your insights, having this discussion. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, hey, thanks so much for having us on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Fess, and to your whole audience for this one. I think you should do more long form stuff, like having people on your show, because I could see it's like a different experience talking with yourself versus getting the soundboard, like you said.
Very true.
Rich and I, unfortunately, we get to do that every episode. It's great to like ignore the person that's talking to you and say your own thoughts for the entire time anyways. It's like a great rapport Rich and I have there. It's like, oh, he said words, okay, whatever, then say your piece and then move on.
It is a lot easier to riff with a group than it is to riff off of a script that I have written in front of me. So yes, definitely it's been a lot of fun, and I do have a lot of ideas that require other people to discuss them. Like there's just too much complications into some of the things that could be discussed in fantasy that it can't be entrusted to just one man alone. So I might have to rope you into more discussions in the future.
Anytime, let us know. Yeah.
All right. So thanks so much. If you watched all the way to the end, be sure to like and subscribe, and head over to Ramble and subscribe to their channel as well if you haven't already. Again, they have a lot of these great rambling discussions on their own. They do book reviews. They do all kinds of things, and it's just a lot of fun to listen. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye, everyone.